Hello, welcome to the webinar today, everyone. I am Jillian Bruce, and we are going to get going here. It is 10 o'clock our time here in San Francisco, and good afternoon, good morning, good evening, no matter where you're joining us from. We're happy to have you here. We've got a great webinar that we're going to share with you today about getting started with Process Builder. This is a presentation that Rachel, our presenter, put together for Dreamforce, so we're excited to be able to bring that to life for you here in a webinar. Before we get started, just want to give you a quick overview of who's going to be presenting. This is Rachel Benson, who I'm going to introduce you to in a minute. She's a CRM data analyst at One United Bank, and she is an incredible, awesome admin. We're very happy that she's able to share her expertise with us today. As with every Salesforce presentation, we get started with our forward-looking statement. So this is a reminder to only make purchasing decisions based on currently available features and functionality. Not going to be a problem today because we are talking about Process Builder, which is readily available for everyone. Connect with us. We want to remind you that we are on the platform of your choosing. So we are on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, and admin.salesforce.com is our website where you can find this webinar after we post the recording and the slides, which we will be doing, as well as all of the other webinars that we've done, upcoming webinars. We've got great blog posts on there, resources to help you do things like roll out Lightning, learn about Process Builder, and we've got podcasts on there. So if you haven't already checked out admin.salesforce.com, make sure to do so. This webinar is being recorded. This is the #1 question we get all of the time, and I just want to make it very clear we are absolutely recording this webinar. It will be posted, the slides as well as the actual recording will be posted within a day or two of the webinar. It takes us a couple days to get the video rendered and up there, but the slides will be available immediately. So don't fret. If you want to go over something, you will have access to that, and you can share it with your friends. If you've got questions, we really would love to see what questions you've got, and you don't have to wait till the end to ask them. So in the Trailblazer community, we have an admin webinar group, and you can use that bit.ly. Remember, with bit.ly, capitals matter, so make sure you use capital A, capital W, capital G. That'll take you right to our admin webinars group, and you can post your question there. We've got experts standing by to answer them, and if we have some time at the end of this presentation, we will answer some of those live on the line. If we don't get to your question during this session, don't worry. We will make sure that we answer your question within the next day. All right, so Rachel is going to take us through this incredible presentation that she's put together, and she's going to talk about why she learned to automate, how she approaches automation. She's actually going to give us a great demo of how she uses Process Builder. And then we're going to go over some resources, and then if we have time, we'll get into some Q&A. So with that, Rachel, I'm going to kick it on off to you.
Thanks, Jillian. Appreciate it. Hi, everyone. I'm excited to be presenting to all of you. I'm Rachel Benson. I am the CRM data analyst and chief administrator at One United Bank, the largest Black-owned bank in the country. And I've had the privilege of working on the One United team for 3 years now. And in my role here at One United Bank is where I feel I've learned and accomplished the most as a Salesforce administrator. And it was here that we learned about the Process Builder while it was actually in beta testing during the first few months after I joined the team back in 2015. And at the time, we decided it would be a good idea to jump in and participate in the beta testing. And I have to be honest, I never looked back. I love Process Builder from the start, and we were lucky enough to have helped contribute to the feedback during the testing that saw bug fixes and subsequent updates that continue to improve and help evolve Process Builder to this day. So with that, let's jump in. So as I mentioned, I work for One United Bank, the largest Black-owned bank in the country. We're also a community development bank. And what does that mean exactly? For us here at One United, it means we take pride in our involvement with our community, whether that is providing products and services that will empower our customers to hosting financial literacy workshops in our local branches, and even hosting Facebook Live events. When I joined the team in 2015, one of the many projects that came up was in fact our bank events and our ability to register those who attended the events. The problem we faced in 2015 was that our event registration was very antiquated, especially within our community. We would pass out clipboards with paper connection forms for our attendees to hand write out their contact info, possibly respond to a select few questions, such as if they're interested in any of our deposit products or even our Unity Visa secured card. The process was completely manual. It was very time consuming to have the attendees fill out the forms and have a point person collect the forms, send them back to our corporate locations for an admin to manually add the people to Salesforce. Then they would forward the forms to various departments based on the initial feedback. So unfortunately, it was not always guaranteed to be accurate. Follow-up sometimes took weeks, months, sometimes even a year. So what would solve this problem? We needed to ensure accurate data and immediate follow-up. We determined the best way would be to automate as much of the process as we could. But how? Our solution, we determined, would come from Process Builder instead of traditional workflow. So why I learned to use Process Builder and why you should too. One big part for me is the limitations on traditional workflows. And the biggest one is the ability to create records. You can't create records in traditional workflow rules. You can do field updates, you can do alerts, you can do messages, but you cannot create records. You end up needing a developer on staff who will write a trigger to do that, and that takes development time. Also, if you're writing out traditional workflow rules for a business process that might have multiple stages, every one of those stages is going to end up being an individual workflow rule. In Process Builder, it reduces that, so you're not hitting your flow limitations. You've got 15 stages for a process. You've got one process with 15 different scenarios and the different actions that could trigger off of that, so it reduces how many flows you have per object. It also, like I said, cuts down on code to reduce development time. You jumped ahead. That chart was just basically what I'm saying. It's you know, we all love a good comparison chart. Basically, you reduce code and development time by using Process Builder, and it's really easy to use with the visual workflows engine. You know exactly what's going to happen and where and how it's going to go. So let's go over to the chart. Now, like I said, everybody likes a chart. So here I broke down a little bit of the things that, you know, are the differences that I think between Process Builder and workflow rules. And we have found in our opinion that, you know, apps, applications, business processes built with Process Builder have been developed 3 times faster and at 50% of the cost, and in some scenarios maybe even higher, because we don't have to bring in a developer and have to write out code that needs code coverage and testing. So this is just where I see the differences between the two, and I'm definitely pro Process Builder. Okay, so how I approach automation. One thing to remember with is that Process Builder is a tool that can help you solve almost any complex business problem. Process Builder will be the glue that enables you to put all the pieces together. So now in my experience, no admin sets out with the mindset of, I'm going to use automation, now I'll figure out the problem. Usually we have to scope out exactly what the problem is, and then once we know what we need to solve, the tools are there to help us get to the desired solution. So how do we translate a business process into an automated process? Here, where do I begin? Well, you need to determine the stages in the process, the actions within each stage. You determine your stage criteria. What is going to happen? You know, are you using a status field? So at this status, this should happen. Is that going to be your triggers? What's going to happen and what's going to trigger the process, and then what do you want to happen when that is triggered? So you identify your event triggers, your notifications, your approvals. Now, just so you know, when you're looking at something, whiteboarding sessions it enables you to see exactly what you expect to happen. So we do that with every problem and every project here at One United. As soon as something comes up, the first thing out of my boss's mouth is put it on the whiteboard. And some people might not think that makes sense, but it's the ability to see it and where you want it to go. It gives you what you need to do as soon as you sit down into Process Builder. So I definitely recommend whiteboarding sessions if you can. And of course, with our bank registration, we knew how efficient and time-consuming it was. So in that case, any automation would have been a marked increase out the gate. So we're building the process. In this scenario, you want to build all the pieces. Like I mentioned, Process Builder is a tool. It's the glue. So you have to have all the pieces ready to go. Any objects you're going to need, specific fields, your templates. And of course, once you have that all laid out and you've laid out your process, it always comes back to test. You always want to make sure everything is working, everything is firing the way you want it. So I always say test, test, test again, ensure everything fired when it's supposed to, all the scenarios work, so that you know that when you go live and you activate, you're good to go. And of course, any good admin knows you want to be able to measure the usability, your process performance, and the actual business outcomes and your ROI. So definitely keep an eye on that. Okay? And so in this particular scenario that I gave you with the bank event registration in the demo, that kind of example is how do you process that? What did it need? In that example, I determined we needed 2 objects. We needed an event object and attendee object, chatter actions so that it would be easy for a user to quickly register someone that's coming right up to them on a mobile device, custom fields, linking them all, email templates, because as soon as they stepped in, whether they were not interested in anything further, we wanted them to know that we appreciated that they showed up. So you got to get your email templates ready, your email alerts, and then you sit there and you lay it all out. And in this case, we're saying that you're interested in products, you're interested in services. So this particular scenario is that we want to email them instantly. If they're interested in products, we want to get them into a campaign. If they're interested in services, we want to get them right over to sales with an opportunity. So in this case, in this demo, I'm going to show you exactly what that one process would do to be able to do this. So with that said, let's jump right in. So you'll notice that I have 2 versions of this. I'll explain that after. Whenever you're jumping into process build, you've got all your pieces ready. The first thing you're going to do is normally click on new. Pops up, and of course, every record you know needs a name. The API name will pre-fill once you've typed in your name. Give it a description. And then with Process Builder, you have 3 ways to start a process off. A record changes, a platform event occurs, or it's invoked by another process. In this scenario, I'm just going to show you when a record changes. So let's come over here. And now this one's my version 1.1 because I wanted to give you an end result. So this is a cloned version. So if you tested and you found that something didn't fire, you're going to clone your process. And I always, as my best practice, we'd always throw a version number on it so we know exactly which one is active and which one we're working on. So in this case, you come over here. This is where you define your object. And normally you would click here and it lists all your objects, not just out of the box ones, but all your custom objects. And in this case, training event attendee is a custom object. And you also want to determine, is it going to start your process only when a record is created or when a record is created or edited, meaning something will change to then trigger off your process. In this case, we're only processing off of the creation of attendee records so that it doesn't actually accidentally duplicate itself if someone edited a record. So in the first scenario here, the way I've laid it out is that it's an attendee who's not looking for additional follow-up. So in this scenario, someone has come to one of our events, they filled out the form, given us their information, and registered, but they have not expressed an interest in follow-up services or any products. But we still want to at least acknowledge that they have come and send them an email thanking them and getting their information into Salesforce accurately and immediately. So in this case, you come down to the conditions, and yes, don't panic. Yes, it's an API name, but I didn't actually type it in. You would click here, and it brings up, and it lets you select the field where you can actually use the name. And then once you've clicked on it, it will then show the API name. So you don't actually type them in. You can always reference them. And then the operator here is where you select equals, does not equals, null is changed. And depending on the type of field it is, these will change depending on it. And field reference is always enables you if you have an object that you're referencing and it has a connected object or has a field that you want to reference on them, that's what this is referring to. So then you fill in the values here. So this happens to be a checkbox. And I'm checking off when they're in the chatter action that they are attending the event, so it's always going to be true. So when that happens, it will enable this to trigger. So on this case, they did attend the event. They're not interested in services. They said no, and they're not interested in any products about business needs, literary services, or retirement services. And we also included that the contact lookup is not does not equal global constant null, meaning that field is not blank is what that means. So if all of those scenarios are met, then the immediate actions that I'll define in the next step will fire. So in this case, because they express no interest in follow-up services or in any products, we just want to send them an email. In this case, it's called an email alert. So you name your action, you select the alert that you created that you want to be sent to them, and you save it. Now, when you do an email alert, just as an FYI, it doesn't necessarily leave an activity record on the contact. So if you want to see that that has happened, you want to cover your bases by doing a second action where it actually creates a completed task. So I do that in so you can see that. So you just fill in your task fields that you want and mark it closed, knowing that the email alert already issued. So you would just automatically close it for your own records and your own peace of mind, knowing that the email went out through the email alert. Okay, so the next scenario would be someone who attended the event and did express an interest in services, but maybe not necessarily any of our products. So they would say, yes, they're interested in services, but they didn't necessarily check off any of the boxes. So in this scenario, we're going to have the email alert go out thanking them for attending because we always want to acknowledge that they came. But then our next one will be a record creation. In this case, we're going to create an opportunity record. So then you name your action, just like you do with the email alert. And because you've selected to create a record, then you're going to obviously select your object, in this case, an opportunity. Now, with opportunities, as everyone will know, there are certain fields that opportunity requires to be filled out before a record can be saved. So when that happens, those fields automatically show up in dark gray because it will not let you save this action until you've defined what you want those fields to default as. And in this case, it's close date, name, and stage. Those are typical for opportunity. I threw in some formulas just so that it's always consistent. You know, we throw out a close date of 90 days, so it gives it 90 days for the sales team to work on, predefine the name to be that it's from a training event follow-up so they know that that's where it came from. Throw in the stage prospecting because it's right at the front, but it's not guaranteed. It hasn't been qualified yet because it may turn into nothing. Whatever is appropriate for your business. And in this case, of course, it's not necessarily a required field, but account associated to the account that's connected to the contact doesn't hurt because then it will actually associate all of those records outside in your org so that you can see on the account that those opportunities may have resulted from that bank event. So you can sit here, you pick the field, and in this case, I did a field reference, and then I did a lookup to the training event attendee record. I want to associate it to the account that's associated to the contact, so I type in contact. I click on contact to come over here, and this is all the fields associated to the contact. Now, if I wanted to pull a field from account, then I would continue on here where it says the account team has the arrow pointing to the right, but in this case, I don't want to pull a different account field. I just want to pull the account ID. So you scroll down here, select it, and then click choose, and then you're good to go. In this case, we'll go ahead and save that, and that is what would happen in that scenario. Now, I did create a third scenario. In this one, it would be that they did express an interest in services, and they did express an interest in business needs, but not necessarily in the literary services or in retirement services, so those would be false. And the difference between this one and the previous one is that, again, it would be an email alert, an opportunity created, but in this case, it would also create a campaign. And just like with opportunity, once you've selected campaign member as your object, campaign member is a child of campaign. So campaign is a required field. It would show up immediately as one of the fields you have to fill in before you can click save. In this case, you want it to be a very specific campaign, and you need to define the actual ID of that campaign because you may not necessarily have stored it somewhere. But if you did associate specific campaigns, for instance, to the object that you defined, you could always do a field reference. And then you could easily just reference that field off of the object. In this case, I didn't do it. So I would plug in the unique ID for that individual campaign and associate any fields that is applicable to my business unit. Once I've done that, click save. And then once you've defined everything and you feel that you're ready to activate, you're ready to test, you would simply click activate. So in this case, I did activate my version 1.1. So so I'll just show you what it looks like on the contact record. So here in Pretty Lightning, I threw in some of the components on the right-hand side just to make it easy. In this case, the attendee record is here. They attended a financial literacy workshop, and they did indicate that they're interested in services, and another checkbox. So because of that, they were inserted into a campaign, so their campaign history is here, and the opportunity is here. And then if you come down, the email is down in their activity, and it lets you know that they did get the thank you email for having attended the event. And that's the end of the demo.
That was awesome, Rachel. All right, wrap it up for us.
All right, so 3 tips to remember when you're deploying a new process. Once you've built it all, take a deep breath. You've done all the work. Okay, you've deployed it. The one thing you always want to remember is if you are referencing unique IDs, just like I showed you with the campaign member, IDs change between orgs. So just swap them out before you activate your process. And those are the 3 things that I could think of. So what did we learn today? Process Builder is easy to build and use. It reduces your costs, it can increase your efficiencies and ensure accuracy, and it reduces the amount of workflows for easy management. You know what's happening when, where, and how. And with that, back to you, Jillian.
Awesome, amazing job, Rachel. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. It was a really fun demo. Just as a reminder, if you want some resources to learn more about Process Builder, we have so many for you. So there is some great content on Trailhead, which is the fun and easy way to learn Salesforce. Definitely check out the process automation module. And there's a quick start about Process Builder that'll really get you hands-on really quick. I think it's a 20-minute quick start. So if you got 20 minutes today, go in there and go take that quick start. On admin.salesforce.com, my favorite website, we have a blog that's actually really great, and it's how to automate your entire business operation without code, focusing on Process Builder. We have a couple podcasts, the Salesforce Admin podcast, featuring some process automation experts. We have one with Jennifer Lee and another one with Benjamin Bolopue about how to take processes into Salesforce to automate them. And there is even a whole tutorial site on how to use Process Builder. The bit.ly is right there, bit.ly/Process Builder tutorial. So definitely make sure to check that out if you want to learn more. And as a wrap up for the webinar, before we get into Q&A, we have that admin webinar group. So I see there's a bunch of questions people have posted. We're going to get to a few of them in just a second. Please make sure to fill out the survey that you'll get in your email after this webinar. Let us know what you liked, what you didn't like. That helps us get more content for future webinars. And you'll be able to access the slides from this webinar, I think right now, in fact, or shortly after this webinar on our on SlideShare. So it'll be at that bit.ly. So with that, let's talk about some questions here. So Rachel, I have a question about best practices. This question is from Fending You. I'm sorry if I screwed your name up there. The question is it against best practice to use multiple Process Builder processes and workflows at the same time?
I don't necessarily say that that's against best practices. I can tell you right now, we have multiple workflows running currently in our org and multiple processes. I mean, it makes it harder to know when something happens or something goes wrong and you're trying to troubleshoot to find it. I know that in our secured card app, it was built prior to Process Builder, so it has some workflows in it. And sometimes when something happens, we're having to click through all the individual workflows to find out what fired incorrectly or where the problem is. So it's not necessarily that it's against best practices. It's just that, you know, I don't necessarily advise it. Like, I'm actually actively working to eliminate the traditional workflows that we have so that we know exactly where everything is in Process Builder, and we can nail down exactly where the problems are.
Yeah, it's a great tip. I think a lot of people are going through that transition of bringing in whatever they can from workflow into Process Builder, because it does make it easier for you to work with what's going on in there. And I think a kind of a follow-up or second question would be, how do you approach troubleshooting in Process Builder?
Well, that's why that's why I say test, and test, because if you're in a sandbox and you're testing, and you know that something should have happened and it didn't, then you know it didn't happen. And we found a trick, because you can do chatter posts as an action. Sometimes in our testing, I'll throw in an extra action of a chatter post and say it worked, smiley face, and that's how I know it worked. But unfortunately, sometimes I have to fall onto the debug log, because, you know, things just don't always happen. So sometimes just throw the debug log on to find out what tripped and what didn't happen. But at least with Process Builder, what I actually really like that they have is when you have tripped a flow error, you get an email. A very detailed, very difficult email to read that they are still evolving and working on. But as soon as an error trips in a flow in Process Builder, you get an immediate email for the user that actually created and activated that process. So that actually is I found has always been extremely helpful when there has been an error in the flow and it's tripped, that it alerts me. So if a user trips it and they don't necessarily realize that they tripped a flow, they didn't get an error on the screen telling them a flow so that they have to call me as the admin, my email instantly came in and told me that there was something, and it tells me which user is it, tells me what time, what object, and I can track it down through that email. I find that is the most useful thing that has come with Process Builder almost from the start, is that email.
That's awesome. That's useful info. All right, we've got a question from Rose Green. She asks, when adding an email alert to the Process Builder, do you create the email alert beforehand, or can you create it during Process Builder?
No, it's just like with your objects and your email templates. An email alert has to already be in there available for Process Builder to find it and include it. So if you know that you want to trigger an email in your process, you've got to build the template, and then you have to build the alert before you then can reference it in the process.
Yep. Great answer. Okay, we've got another question here from Lynn Wilson. And her question is asking if you can use Process Builder to send emails just within your organization to employees versus external emails.
Absolutely. I mean, you actually can control that in email alerts. So when in the process, when you reference the alert, if you built the alert to only go to like an object owner or queue or group, then it would do that. It's basically how you built the alerts, and then the process then calls on the alert and then and fires it off. So if we do that. We have scenarios where our applications hit a certain time frame and an alert has to go to an internal group to alert them to it. We actually fire that off in a process, but the alert itself makes sure that only those in the queue or in that specific group that we specified in the alert gets the email internally.
Awesome. Well, Rachel, thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us today. We are going to wrap up this webinar, and if you have any questions we did not get to, don't worry, we will get to them. Please continue to post them on our admin webinar group and the Trailblazer community. And we hope that everyone has a fantastic week and get hands-on with Process Builder. Take care, everybody.
Thanks.